Hey everybody, welcome to ScreenFlow Live, episode 2. We are now streaming live every Wednesday at 2:30 at this time, Pacific time, on our Facebook Live page. And my name is Andrew Haley. I'm the product evangelist for ScreenFlow here at Telestream. And I'd like to welcome you to our second episode. From this point forward, should pretty much be a weekly episode whenever we can. I mean, there may be some times when we just can't do an episode. But this particular episode topic is going to be a rebroadcast of a live webinar I did last year, maybe a little earlier than that, last year, on advanced ScreenFlow techniques. And some of the, advanced features of ScreenFlow you might not know, and some pretty cool stuff. So I go pretty in depth, but it's going to be about 40 minutes long. And we're going to be available on the comments to watch your comments or questions and answer those while this broadcast is going. And then I'll come back here at the end and answer your questions live on camera, and we can even do some in ScreenFlow on-screen demonstrations or so forth, some hands-on stuff if you like, or if that is going to be useful for you guys. So we're going to roll the clip. It's me going through advanced ScreenFlow techniques. And just if you have questions, leave them in the comments. I'll be standing by, and some of the other Telestream folks will be watching those to help answer your questions if you have any during the presentation. And then at the end, about 3:30 or so, we'll take some more questions if you have some live on camera like this. All right, enjoy. This is a little bit of a blast from the past, a very hopefully useful episode for you, and a good one that I think may be useful. The audio quality is going to be a little different because I was using a different microphone, just a USB headset at the time for the webinar software we were using. It's a little different than the setup we have right now. So it should be okay. You can hear everything. It does get a little funky just here and there. It's maybe a little scratchier, but still pretty good. So just in case you're noticing that difference, then that's why. I'll see you at the end of this webinar, this live stream, and stay tuned or get involved on the comments section of the chat if you have any questions. Hope you enjoy this. See you later.
Today we're going to spend most of our time in the hands-on projects. I'll try to demonstrate the things you see on this list. We're going to try to focus on things you may not have seen in previous webinars. We will touch on some of them, but if you missed the last advanced webinar, it was taught by Lucas Bischofberger, and he did an awesome job covering how to do animations and nesting and basic workflow. So we won't touch on those as much today. I recommend you go back and watch that webinar if you didn't get a chance to catch it. And today we'll kind of move onwards and upwards. So with that said, I'd like to focus mostly on making sort of an animation but using different types of elements in the project, including some pre-made elements such as our Flotility pack, which you can buy on our website at telestream.net, and it's available to all of you. We'll also try to stop a couple times during the presentation to take a few questions, just break up the flow, and also answer anything that may be relevant to what we were showing. All right, beyond building using elements, pre-made elements, we'll talk about animating filters, which is something you may not know you can do in ScreenFlow, as well as exporting clips to use in other projects. So you can actually, kind of like a Russian nesting doll, put a clip inside another project, export another clip, put another clip in another project. It's kind of cool. You can compound effects and compound filters, which normally would bog down your computer. So there's some real advantages to doing that. Finally, we'll talk about saving projects as templates. This is a real time saver. If you invested a lot of time or work into a particular effect or building a project, you don't want to just throw all that work away after you're done with the project. You can actually use it as a template for additional intros, and just by changing a few things. So we'll look at that. And finally, if we have time, we'll cover some exporting tips and information, but we'll see how far we get. Today's focus is really on building projects. So we want to focus on building and building and building. I have a lot of projects here, as you can see, that just started with version 0 and worked my way down to version 5. So we'll try to get as far as we can, but I may not be able to show you everything. We'll try to make a lot of these elements available for download with the webinar after we're done today. So that said, let's just open a basic project. So here is a standard 1920 by 1080 ScreenFlow project with a white background that I've set up, just making a new document. I've added 2 elements, actually 3, 2 text boxes, and a logo in the middle. Now, this in and of itself is enough to do most intros. I have a lot of projects here, as you can see, that just started with version 0 and worked my way down to version 5. So we'll try to get as far as we can, but I may not be able to show you everything. We'll try to make a lot of these elements available for download with the webinar after we're done today. So that said, let's just open a basic project. So here is a standard 1920 by 1080 ScreenFlow project with a white background that I've set up, just making a new document. I've added 2 elements, actually 3, 2 text boxes, and a logo in the middle. Now, this in and of itself is enough to do most intros. You could simply fade the words on the screen with a simple fade in. You could add beginning transitions to all of them and kind of stretch those out if you want. One of the things about doing this is you either need to first group the clips so that when you add your transition, most of the clips will move as a group, but adding transitions that way and removing them individually can be a pain because you have to adjust each one individually. So what I like to do is actually just select all 3, and I can do the same thing as a transition or fade in or crossfade, but if I know it's going to be a fade, just by changing the opacity value and adding a video action. So that's how I like to work. I add a video action and then simply drop the opacity to 0 before the video action. And now when I adjust, I can actually select all 3 of those together. And they're already selected because when I created them, they came in selected at the same time. So now I can change all of their values at the same time. Nice thing about it also is I can move the boxes around and resize the time, and I don't necessarily have to change the length of my clip unless I want to. So that's one of the ways I like to work, and it's a tip that I will share with you. So as I was saying, if we just look at that sort of slow fade in, there's nothing wrong with that. That could go on most intro videos. Now, what most fade-ins typically range from about 1 to 4 seconds on the long end. If you've got a really slow, long fade-in, that's quite long. But 1 to 2 seconds is about average and works for 90% of the time. Now, as I said, there's nothing wrong with this, but we're going to try to show you how you can start with something simple like this, and just through a process of iteration and building and trying new things, you can really end up with something quite complex. So let me show you, after spending some time with these particular elements, actually there's one more I want to show. I added a pre-made element from the Flotility pack, this rainbow diagonal clip. Flotility is one of those companies or project packs that will really increase the production value of your projects. They've created some awesome clips. As you can see, you've got this rainbow shimmering luminant cascade that just adds a lot, I don't know, just makes it quite pretty. And if we resize it up to the left corner here, I'll just hold my shift key, and that will drag it out in scale to fill the screen there. You can see just by putting that in the background, I've really upped the production value. So using these 4 elements, more or less, we also add some audio and some other things. After iterating and building, you can get to a project that's much more complex. And so for that, I'm going to switch over to the audio mode here. So hopefully you can hear this. You can see what you might end up with just by building. So I'm not actually, I'll make sure you guys can hear it? Great. Okay. So after doing something simple, starting with something simple, you can see using ScreenFlow and building, I was able to eventually put the rainbows just inside the letters, and using some animation and some filters, get to something much more complex. So we'll try to get there today, and I'll show you how I got there. As I said, when you're going to hear the sound from the projects, you're going to get a little bit of echo in my voice. So I'll switch back to the normal mode for now. Okay, so with this basic project, as I've shown, we've got these elements going on. And the first thing I want to do is just kind of build from here. Watching it slowly, I noticed that the rainbows are actually moving quite slow. They're pretty, but they're not moving quickly. It's almost a 1.5-minute long clip. A real quick way to increase the dynamic movement any clip, you can open the clip inspector, and you can actually drag the speed slider here to the left. 349% roughly the default here, but if you want to enter a higher value, you can do that manually in the box. All right. So now you can see the rainbows are moving quite a bit faster, and that really adds this shimmery, energetic effect. Is kind of what I'm going for. With this Powered by Wirecast logo, I want to sort of imbue this sense of energy into the letters and the logo itself. And so I'm kind of hoping the rainbow flotility element will assist me in that. From there, the next thing to do is to keep animating and looking at things. So the simple fade in, what if I just staggered it a little bit? And we selected the last two and just brought them in after the first one. Just move the filters over. And quick tip here is the Shift-Z command. Shift-Z will automatically fill your whole timeline with your entire project. So it's much faster than necessarily coming down here to the zoom slider and dragging it in or out. Shift-Z will just auto size for you. So if we drag back here and watch, we've got our rainbows going quickly in the background, powered by Wirecast. Again, looks good. I mean, the rainbows really add some value there, and I don't see anything wrong with that. But let's say I want to animate a property and actually have the Wirecast and Wirecast logo come in faster and more dynamically, maybe a little different, almost like a shimmer in or an appearance out of nowhere. Well, this is where animating some properties you may not know about comes quite handy. And I'm actually going to ungroup these clips real fast. Okay, so let's click out. And what I'm going to do is just select the two elements I want to change in the projects, which is my logo and my Wirecast. I'm going to add a video filter to it. And this is at the bottom of the Video Properties tab, and many of you may or may not have ventured down this far on the bar, but it's got some really cool elements that can really take your projects up a notch. So the first thing I'm going to do is you can see they're categorized into different categories of filters, and I just am looking for a blur effect. And I encourage you to just kind of explore through these and try different ones and see what the properties are. For example, you may not know what a circular splash distortion looks like, and you just want to try it out and see what effect it has on something. So that's an easy way just to add it, and like a bump. It's kind of a cool effect, and you can add it to whatever elements and play around with it. But for our purposes, the box blur is really what we're going for on this. And the radius of the blur is the effect, is how blurry it really is. So I'm going to make it as blurry as possible. And you can't see this because the opacity is at 0. But if we scroll to the end here, you can see that it's quite blurry. Now, the trick now is to add the filter again at the end of the video action. We'll add it once more, and now the radius automatically is defaulted to 10, and I'll actually slide that all the way to 1. So it's just like changing the opacity from 100 to 0 or the scale or whatever. On this side, the property is at 100. Over the course of the video box, we've now added it to 0. ScreenFlow will interpolate the difference and calculate what that looks like. So let's watch it. Neat. It's got a cool effect. So now the two sort of elements grouped together come in different ways. One thing I noticed is it's still a little slow, so why don't we pop it in even faster? And maybe we could have it all kind of come in together. And this is just by moving and arranging the action boxes on the clips here. Now that looks cool. It's very sort of calling the shimmery background. Now, again, this would be a place I could stop. Honestly, I'm pretty happy with this, and I might be able to use this for some projects. So if I kind of like where I'm at, this is a good time to maybe save your project and then duplicate it. So this is a useful tool when you want to start making additional changes. So I kind of like what we have here, but what if I want to change something about it, and I'm not sure if it's going to be good or if it's going to look bad, and I don't want to have to undo a bunch of times. I want to just kind of freeze this moment and come back to it if I need to, or just explore on. Well, that's why we have the duplicate command in the file menu here. By duplicating a project, ScreenFlow just copies it, makes a perfect copy. It actually adds the word copy in the title. I don't like the word copy because this starts to add up. Copy, you get copies of copies, it gets a little crazy. So I'm just going to call this version 1, and I'm going to title that. I'm actually going to cancel the title. I need to make sure it's saved on the desktop because I already have a title 1. I'm going to call it version 1 and save it on my desktop. And now I can actually keep moving onward knowing that this work is safe and it's more or less going to stay intact as long as I don't change that project. Now I'm free to kind of explore and experiment a little bit. So the first thing I want to explore with is possibly after the Powered by Wirecast comes in, what could I do if I added a change or a filter to the rainbow background? So I'm going to add a filter to that. Now, I also may want to experiment with a fade as well. So let's try adding a video action. We're going to change the opacity. And one thing I'm noticing is that the rainbows are very colorful, which is good at first, but when the Wirecast logo is on, I actually want them to kind of take a back seat. If they're too bright, they're kind of competing for the attention. So just a great way to kind of dim them or take them down a notch just a little bit is to use the opacity value. And maybe I don't want the rainbows to go completely away, but just dim them enough so that maybe 50% or so. Just so that they're still there, still visible, but not trying to shout over the actual logo itself. Yeah, so that pops the logo out even more. Now, I like this effect, but I could actually, if at this point I want to animate something in, and so that when the Wirecast kind of pops in after that fade, if I want to sort of emphasize that by somehow changing the background even more in a sort of a substantial way, it's a good time to either add another video action or just cut the clip. And I use my T key there, and that separates this one from this one. So now I can change these properties, and I can actually address, totally change the value. And in that case, you might get something that looks like this. So I've cut the clip. This is a project kind of pre-made. I'm not going to bore you with what I did there, but basically I took the opacity down, just like I promised. We snapped Wirecast in with the animated blur effect, and now I've got this project, this additional rainbow clip, and all I did was I went and applied another filter to it. So let's look at those filters. I have this cool pixelate filter, which basically, if you change the size, you can see it takes this kind of smooth rainbow effect and starts to pixelate it, which is an effect I'm sure most of you are familiar with on computers, especially if it's kind of a stylistic choice now, and games like Minecraft or something like that use it quite a lot. It's kind of a harken back to the older days of digital information. So I think that's kind of a neat connotation to draw with the Powered by Wirecast. And what's cool is that even though the filter's on it, the rainbow and the flotility animation is still going on, but it's got this amazing new effect. So this is kind of another power tip, which is that if you add a flotility, project here, and you drag it down, any clip here can be totally changed just by adding a filter to it, and especially if the clip's already animated for you. So remember the box blur we added to the last one? Well, we could, for example, add it to this clip and change the radius here, and you get this same clip still animated, but with a totally different look. So these clips don't just have to have one look to them and be used in one way in each project. They've got as many variations as you want to add on them. So let's do that. Now the next thing I did here was I added some audio down below. I have this cool effect, and I'm actually going to turn on the audio again, so you might get that echo, so we can listen to what the total effect. Okay, so here we go. So keep in mind that all we have here is what I started with, plus the snap-in effect. I then cut my clip down here. This is simply an opacity change to the 70% range or so. And then I snap it into focus, but with this filter on. And the last piece of the puzzle is to go through and find some audio. And all together, you're going to get a really powerful logo effect. Let's listen. Now at the end, I just added kind of a slow fade in. We had a project where I was showing you kind of how far you can get. Now we've got this pixel and we played the audio back, and you can see that when you add audio to a project, it really improves it. I call it a force multiplier. It actually adds more value than just a linear jump. I think it's an exponential jump when you start adding the right audio to your projects. Just takes it over the top. So how did I get this audio? Where did I find it? And where are these libraries? Well, as I said, Apple provides some fantastic libraries for you to use that are free, royalty-free. We use them all the time here, and it means we don't have to pay, $10, $20 each time. There's also lots of sites out there. But on your computer, if you have purchased or installed either GarageBand, iLife, the iLife applications such as iMovie, or if you have the Final Cut Pro or Pro Tools, any of Apple's sort of professional, semi-professional audio and video editing software programs that tend to come with libraries that they provide for you. So once you've installed those, you can find those libraries by going to your hard drive, which I have up here, going to your library, audio, and Apple Loops. The Apple Loops library, I believe, is also available for purchase from Apple or for download, and you can find that. If you dive into that, you'll find a bunch of different libraries depending on what kind of programs you have on your computer. The ones that I use the most, as I said, were the iLife sound effects and the Final Cut Pro sound effects. They're different libraries, have different folders and effects. This is kind of like the flotility for your sound effects. It's a series of files and sounds. You're going to have a lot of different ones. You probably won't use 90% of them, but when you need the one that they have, it's incredibly useful and it makes your projects that much better. So I kind of jumped through. They have some basic music. They divide it into different categories, and I encourage you to get your hands on these and kind of explore through and listen. You can also load all of these into your iTunes and keep track of them in playlists and commonly use that. So when I find a sound effect that I use or plan on using, I just load it into my iTunes a lot. But this is kind of where they sit hidden on your computer. They're also in these CAF extension file formats, which tends to be read mostly by the Apple software programs. So the Apple Core Audio format is, I guess, what that stands for. And that typically means that Apple programs like GarageBand are kind of designed to read these types of files more easily. But they can go into iTunes and you can convert them into WAV files, AIFF files, and MP3s. Okay, so that's where I grabbed those from. So let's open the next phase here. I'm going to go on to the next principle. So up till now, I've said that we had, actually I'll just show you version 3. That's a little faster here. So up till now, we've kind of had this idea of the letters appearing on top of the rainbows, and I did a lot of cool stuff to that. But the one thing that this never really achieved was it never really made the rainbow color background and the shimmeriness kind of come into the letters and be a part of them. It really made the logo stand out on top. So I wanted to start exploring how I might be able to bring those letters in, sort of the energy into the actual logo itself. So I started messing around. I saved a couple projects and that I liked. As I said, everything up till now I'm happy with, but I want to keep exploring and trying a few things and building and iterating. So the next step was I thought, well, what if I actually, instead of putting the rainbows underneath all of my project elements, my logo, what if I put the rainbow clip on top? What would that look like? So let's see. As you can see, that automatically lends more of a closeness. The logo seems to be side, obviously it's covered by the rainbows, and it just kind of brings them a little closer together. Obviously this has the downside of obscuring the logo a little bit more, but once you fade it out, it's kind of got this nice ghostly residue, and the energy seems to sort of hang in the air better. So I'm liking where this is going. But as we said, the first thing I've noticed when I first played this clip, when it was still a minute and a half long, was that it was kind of slow then. It's feeling slow now. It's nice to have these sort of long logo sequences, but I think we want more energy. The whole idea is to get this kind of a more powered, energetic logo. So what I did was I decided to speed it up again. Now, the best I could technically double-click this again and change the speed to some higher value, say 700%, and really shorten it down. But unfortunately, I'm not sure if that's what I want to do. And I have to adjust all these other clips to fit, and it kind of becomes this process where it can be a little bit more painful than it's worth it. And also, what if I want to add some additional features and effects? So this is a good time to use this technique that I recommend in some situations, which is the exporting your project as a clip. If you kind of already have all of these elements together and you know that you want to start builds off of that, because I do like the way everything looks there, I just want it to be faster and to work with it some more, I'm actually going to export a lossless ProRes version of it. Lossless is exactly what it sounds like. It's keeping as much quality as is possible, and you're basically going to get a clip at the end that is quite a large file but has as much of the information that is stored in this ScreenFlow project as is possible. So I'm just going to export that to the desktop, and it's going to create about a 26-second ProRes clip. Now, when it says with alpha, it actually means it's going to save the transparency values if there are any, which means like these text files, all of this space in between the letters is technically transparent. And so the alpha channel will be preserved in that, and this won't just be a white background where you can't put something behind it. So it's a very handy layer or feature to have in the export. So if you open it, you'll see you get the clip in this beautiful large ProRes format, and then kind of fades out. And the reason it's fading out there is because of the alpha channel. It's saving that transparency, and this is technically all see-through except for the black letters, which just blend into the background. So why don't we just drag that into a new project? So we got this great clip to work with. Let's see what we can do with it. So I'm going to create a new project. Command N is the shortcut for that. And as we talked about earlier, you can actually just drag stuff right into your project. So I'm just going to drag it in. I'm going to hit my Shift-Z command to size it up. So we're now looking at about 26 seconds on the timeline. And the first thing I want to do is just scrub through it, just see how it looks. And look, we're getting this cool shimmery effect as the alpha transparency gives way to the black background of the ScreenFlow project. So you got this neat energetic effect, and this is really what I'm looking for. I'm beginning to see the letters sort of take on this energy and luminescence of the rainbows. So I'm liking it, and they're also standing out quite nicely against the black background, which is transparent. So really cool stuff. The only thing here I'd say is let's speed it up. So double click again, drag the slider to the left. I really don't need to go much higher than that. Let's preview it. Cool. So the only thing I would do to that is add some sound, and maybe this solo Wirecast logo just maybe fade it out. So that's what I did. And I'll show you, and we can listen to what that looks like. So that was my V4 Part 1, which was just the whole clip, which I exported as a ProRes movie. And I brought it into this new project, added some sound, and sped it up. And we'll watch that and listen. Cool. So now I've got a very, let me turn off the echo here. I've got a very quick, effective, energetic logo. I really like that. And that was really just without the white background, which was originally my intention. So what if we go towards that white again? What can we do with that? And so let's change the background. We'll make it white. Apply. Now those black letters pop onto a white background. That's looking really cool in a different kind of way. And I actually like the way the rainbows are kind of blending into the white now. But the advantage here of having this in the ProRes clip is I can throw more filters on it, and ScreenFlow isn't going to have any issue keeping up with what I'm doing because I'm not stacking filters on top of filters and then adding speed effects and all this different stuff all within a single clip or project, which can really down your projects. One of the advantages of kind of stopping and exporting a clip, if you know you want to use it in another project, is that you're going to save your computer a ton of problems. As I said, it's kind of like trying to solve a bunch of math equations while riding a bike and remembering where everything is on the chessboard at the same time, and how moving one thing affects 100 other things. So just stopping, exporting the ProRes clip, bringing it back in, throwing on some more filters can actually save you a ton of overhead on your computer. So I'm actually going to select the clip, and we're going to add this cool effect, which to me really, if you notice without the effect, the rainbows are over the whole screen. But what I really want to focus on is this area in the middle where the words are and the logo is itself. So I kind of want to bring the focus in more, kind of spotlight that, and there's some great filters for that. One of them is the vignette effect, and you can find that under, sorry, the color effect, I believe. You can find different photo effects, including the vignette effect. And a vignette is really just a fancy term for kind of a soft focus crop. If you look at old photographs, you see kind of a fuzzy, blurry border where the light was beginning to hit the edge of the camera, and or the lens, and so it kind of begins to blur out. Modern digital photographs don't really have that issue as much anymore, so we keep this effect around because we like the look of it. So if you add the vignette effect and you adjust the intensity and the radius, you can really narrow down the area that your audience is kind of focused on. So I like to focus on kind of that central area. You can change the intensity. Again, it's just adjusting, and also the fall off. One good thing to look at here is what does it look like at the end with the effect still on. And I don't want the fall off, for example, to be so high that it actually obscures the logo. So right about there seems to be good medium. Okay, so, and then I can actually change the intensity here and the fall off there. See what that looks like. And get these really cool bright colors at the beginning. So we'll just play that back. Change the icon. And fade out. One more time. Okay, so you can see with that technique of exporting the clip, adding some more filters and effects, you can really go for it. And I'm going to turn off my echoes. Thank you. All right. The final step here is we've really, up till now, kept the rainbows and the words in Wirecast, in ScreenFlow separate in the Wirecast logo. So what if I actually want to bring those into the letters themselves and make the rainbows the part of the letters and see what that looks like? Well, the way to do that is to perhaps spin off an earlier version of your project. And so I'm going to go back, way back to the beginning. I'm going to take these letters, and I'm going to actually take the background, and I'm going to make the letters transparent and just have the rainbows coming through in the places where the letters are. Now, this is best done in a project-by-project, clip-by-clip basis. So copy the clip you want to do this to, and open a new project. Now paste the clip into the new project. It's black. We're going to change the background to white here. Honestly, another way to do this, and it's probably a little faster actually, if you don't want to do the copy-paste method, is if you like all the values except that one value, is just duplicate and then start deleting. So this is kind of a handy thing. So I'm actually going to duplicate this, create a copy, close the original, and in this copy, I can retitle it. Maybe I could just call this Powered By, because that's all I'm going to have in it. And, oh, I've saved it in the wrong location. But anyway, you can save it wherever you want, and then just delete the elements you don't need, which are the other two. And I'm going to grab the rainbow clip. Now I'm just working with the Powered By in this, and it's simply a matter of getting the rainbows into the clips themselves. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to remove the opacity here, get rid of my video action, and I need to make this bigger. It needs to be full screen. So I've got the rainbows underneath, and we're going to just go up and change the scale. So Powered By fills up pretty much the whole screen. One of the ways I did this, if you notice, this isn't your standard text box, and that's because originally when you look at text box, it looks something like this. It's kind of tight and squeezed around the letters themselves. Well, this is handy except when you're doing the effect I'm doing, which is I want just the rainbows on the clip, nowhere else. I don't want the whole background. So I actually want to obscure the background, and that means I'm going to have to fill the text box. To fill the text box, we've got to go to the fill button here, and we're going to change it to white. I'm sorry, that's the actual solid color. Actually, I'm going to do this too. I'm going to change the text to green because I'm actually going to key that out. So I'm going to change the text to green because chroma key tends to work best with colors like that are obvious and stand out. I'm going to fill the backdrop, and then I'm going to actually change the margin up a little bit. All right, so now I've got this great powered by logo. The other way to achieve that margin fill is kind of what I was showing you with doing the returns. You can make the margins much larger. All right. Now, the rainbow clip is still behind there, but we can't see it unless we key out the green. And in this case, I'm just zooming in here with my scroll wheel on my mouse just to make this larger so I can see it. We're going to add a filter to the text. We're going to filter out the green. And the chroma key instantly keys in on the green, and you can kind of adjust it how you like using the sliders. You can see now the rainbows clip pops through. And if I play it, it's actually playing in the background. That gets this nice animated effect. So using the chroma key filter and then using a clip underneath, you can do this. Now, this is a good time to either nest this to use in additional. This is what we talked about. Now I can add my other project elements like my Wirecast logo and all of that. Or the other option is you can export this as a clip. And you could call it powered by. One of the advantages of this exporting the ProRes clip is it allows you to do the speed changes. With a nested clip, you can't do that, which is one of the reasons why we're exporting these as clips. So if I drag this powered by clip in, and it's right below this nested clip, and we try to change, let's try to change the speed. If you double click a nested clip, it just opens the clips themselves into a new project timeline. You can't actually open the clip inspector without going to clip inspector, but if you look here, there's no speed changes available for a nested clip. This is because there's like 2, 3, 4, 10 clips inside of there, and it's hard for ScreenFlow to calculate what you really mean by speed change. You'd have to dive in, change the speed individually. So the nice thing about exporting a clip, a nested sequence or a bunch of clips into a single clip is now you've just got one, ScreenFlow only has one thing to deal with, just the length of this. So that's why we do it this way. If I wanted to actually speed this up even more, then I can do that using this ProRes clip. Does that answer your question? So basically, repeating this process, and then for the Wirecast, so I did the same thing in a Wirecast project with the impact font, and I again exported a clip, ProRes lossless, and this is what I got. I took my clips and compiled all of them into a new project to see what that would look like. And this is basically, now I've got my powered by rainbow letters. I've got my Wirecast powered by rainbow letters. Now you'll keep in mind that these are actually much larger than in terms of size because you had that big white background, right? So I actually had to crop these down to just to be the area close to. And I'm just holding my control key and clicking, and I'm cropping them closer. So now it really just is the whole clip is boiled down to just this little area right here. The crop commands are also available right here under the video action for that particular clip. You can actually see them here. These are the crops. Same thing with this one. Okay? So I've cropped it down to just the area that I really need, and then I've added a clip on top of them, which is the other clip I liked, and I faded it out. I also did a tricky thing with this clip. I added a chroma key filter. I noticed that this has a lot of green, and I keyed out the kind of green letters, which gets this kind of cool translucent effect. The final thing I did was I threw an additional filter And again, it's just about iterating and adding. I just threw another filter on each one of these individual clips. If you look at that, it's actually the crystallize filter. You can't really see it here, but you see there as we fade in, you get this kind of cool crystallize effect. And I just animated it by changing the values at the beginning and the end. And then you get the play out. The final step is to just kind of nest all of these, the Wirecast logo, all of these. I simply nested them. And that created this nested clip in my timeline. And you can see then I just added audio beneath. And you end up with, let's turn it on one more time. So that, as you can see, is kind of how you build something more complicated. And honestly, I like, I'm going to turn off the echo here. I like the previous versions I did a little better. I was an experiment to try to bring in the rainbows into the letters themselves. Definitely some cool effects, maybe some stuff I could play with some more. But when it comes down to it, I honestly liked version 4, version 3 a little better. And I probably end up using those more than my version 5. But you can see how spinning off duplicates and saving them into iterations and versions allows you to start to experiment and build something much more complex. And then exporting ProRes lossless and bringing it back in allows you to do speed changes and additional things. So that's what I would call creating your own templates in ScreenFlow.
Hey, so I hope that was useful for you guys. We just saw a 40-minute presentation of the ScreenFlow Advanced webinar that I did last year. And I basically went over a lot of the advanced techniques that you might use in a complicated ScreenFlow project. The theme of that was basically that you can build from something very simple to something very complex just through a process of trial and error and experimentation. And you could start with some simple graphics and a simple concept like a title, and slowly by just tweaking this, trying that, adding an element, making a different transition, bringing in some video elements like what we offer through our Flotility pack offerings, you can gradually build things into a pretty neat, and very much more complex project. And also using audio in the right places at the right times can have a really impactful effect on your projects and your videos. So I hope that was helpful. We're just experimenting with our live broadcasting format. We wanted to bring back some old material that might be helpful to people still, and also still take advantage of the live Q&A that Facebook offers and doing these shows live. If you missed it, we're going to be doing this show. We will be available for stuff. So next week we'll probably do a basics. This was an advanced, but obviously there's room for people who are just learning ScreenFlow or still learning things. And, we'll kind of keep tuning in every week here for questions, interaction, comments, and so that we can see what you guys need to know or want to know, talk with you about ScreenFlow, show you what's new and what's exciting, or tell you things you might not have known about it. So I'm just going to check the comments. I'm going to read the comments here on the page. And if you guys have any questions, I can stick around for a little bit. I can answer those for you. So let me load up the comments page here. Melanie, thanks. We're glad you love it. I hope that was helpful for you, and it'll be archived on the Facebook page. You can also find the webinar on our telestream.net page as well in the resources section of ScreenFlow. All right, so if you guys have anything else, I'm happy to show you. Stick around if there's other questions. I'd love to take them. We'll probably stay on. If there's nothing this week, that's okay. We can come back and do another topic next week. So I don't see any other comments or questions coming in at the moment. That's all right. Looks like we've got 6 to 7 viewers. on at the moment. Leave a comment. Let us know what you like about ScreenFlow, what you'd like to see improved. We're always curious about how we can make it better for you. And while I have the, while I'm on here, I can show you where some of those resources are if you're curious. I want to show you on my desktop how you can get more informed. So I'll show you here on the desktop, if you just launch Safari or any browser. And I think that shot may have frozen. You're not seeing it. I'm seeing my camera on the screen. Let's pull this up. Okay, so it doesn't look like that shot's coming through to the, looks like it may have frozen. Not seeing anything. Maybe go into the source settings and then reconnect that shot for the AVIO. Is that working? Okay, well, it's okay if it's not working. We can, I was just going to show where the resources page is. So on our website, it's at telestream.net/screenflow/resources.htm. But there are, you can find the tutorial that we just showed. You can find our basics series. You can find a bunch of quick tip videos or quick start. What's new in ScreenFlow 5, what we launched recently, when we released that version, and a whole bunch of other things and videos and tricks that you might. Lucas Bischofberger, who was the evangelist before me and for ScreenFlow, did some great videos that you might enjoy. Another advanced webinar series, did some awesome stuff on building animations and titles, and to explore around and see what's useful for you guys. And that's kind of it, I think, for today. If there's other comments or questions, feel free. I can stick around a little bit longer. It's about 3:30. I think we'll try to wrap this up every Wednesday within about an hour, depending on how many people are watching or how much time we have. Okay, there it is, the ScreenFlow resources. This is your best friend when it comes to learning the program, the software, and how you can maximize it to work on your own videos, make your own videos look amazing. ScreenFlow is, I think, one of the best simple editors on the Mac, and it's incredibly deep. You can do much more with it than anybody, I think, realizes when they first hear about it or start using it. Once you dive in and you think, I'd really like to, you usually find it in ScreenFlow or a way to do it. So, and it's very, very easy to use. All right, well, I think that's all for today. We will see you next week, Wednesday, at 2:30, same time, same location. Thanks so much for watching, and we hope you enjoyed this advanced webinar on how to use ScreenFlow to make complex titles, complex projects, and layer in things through the process of building your projects from something small to something much more complex, using things like nested clips and creating alternate versions of projects and templates. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.